and welcome to another edition of To Catch a Fraudster. We are excited to have you today. I'm joined by Luis Palomares, and we've got myself, Tyler Adams, co-founder and CEO of Certified. And Luis, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
How's it going, guys? My name is Luis Palomares. I'm Director of Product here at Certified, and happy to talk to you guys today about identity verification.
Yeah, we're excited. So our topic today is how to spot fake identities in an era of AI-powered crime. It's a topic we get a lot of questions about. We are working really hard here at Certified to stay ahead of all of the trends in AI and think about not only how we can use it to stop fraud, but also thinking about how fraudsters are utilizing it to advance their tactics in order to commit more crime. And so really excited to have Luis. He spends time every single day in the product and thinking about how we can evolve this. And yeah, we got some great content for you today. So glad you're here. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We ask that you submit any questions in the chat. That will enable us to be able to provide responses and get to those answers in a timely fashion. Our agenda for today. We're going to start with a case study. We want you to get a sense and a feeling for just exactly how some of these crimes are taking place and how they're utilizing fake identities to be able to execute them. And just like you will see how brazen these criminals are becoming. Then from there, we're going to go into the landscape of fraudulent identification. So we want you to just have a better understanding of what that looks like, other examples that we've seen, how they're coming to be, and I think that will also be really telling and support you in understanding and just awareness of what you're really up against. And then we're going to talk to you about getting partners involved, how we can actually support you. So we hate to do these webinars and have you leave feeling more scared or nervous of what's out there. We want you to know that help is here too. And that you can be supported, that there are things that you can do to be able to prevent these scams from impacting your businesses. And that sort of parlays its way into fighting back with technology. So really thinking about how you can utilize technology to support you in your businesses and your customers from these risks impacting your own business. So we're excited to be able to hopefully leave you at the end of this feeling good and feeling empowered that you can stand up against some of the most sophisticated criminals out there today. All right, let's do it. So here's the case study that I want to walk you through. I'm going to kind of jump to the end just for a second. We became notified of this further on down the line in terms of the steps that it took place, and then we sort of mapped it back out to the beginning, okay? So here's what we knew, right? A fraudster calls a private lender. It is a confident voice, someone who really has a job to be done and they want a cash out refinance. They are able to communicate their needs very well. It is no red flags, no nothing from the lender in that first instance. They said to us, it sounded just like anybody else who we had spoken to previously, looking for this cash out refinance. Absolutely no red flags yet. From there, everything checks out. So the title work is clear. They provide a passport and a visa. Both of those documents have all of the appropriate information. They are all verified by this team. And the fraudster, read this last line, the fraudster themselves even shows up in person to sign paperwork and provide their own wiring instructions for that cash out refinance. So next up, December 11th, the real owner returns. So can you imagine you are the owner, you return home from a trip abroad and you see in your mail that there has been property taxes paid. And then beyond that, you find out that someone has refinanced your property without your knowledge. And I mean, it's so gut wrenching to think about. We've had the seller impersonation frauds where, land that somebody starts building houses on and the impact of that. But immediately this gentleman comes home and just thinks, oh my gosh, what happened? And how am I going to unwind this? What is going to be the impact for me? Local law enforcement step in. The minute that revelation takes place, they start doing the investigation. So like I said, some of those details that we shared in the previous slide came as a result of these additional steps that took place. But what was pretty fascinating, especially when it comes to the topic that we're after today, is that ID documentation, right? So the fraudster showed up in this office with a passport, and when that passport was analyzed, the experts essentially said, like, this is one of the absolute best we've ever seen. This is a document that I am not surprised nobody could have told the difference between a real one and a fake one. And that is what really like caught our eye as we continue to think about how we can develop technology and support folks to prevent these sorts of mistakes and misidentifying a document. But there's also some things about this that make it really hard. And I'll let Luis take this. So Luis, like when you looked at this document and you saw it, like what kind of stood out to you in terms of why they were successful with this for the fraud?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely remember seeing this, and it's definitely high quality. I mean, the system, looking through this, the way this was picked was very strategic. It's very common for a lot of verification vendors to actually publish what states or what countries they support and what passports they support. This passport here was picked, I believe, strategically because it's one of those passports that not a whole lot of vendors out there actually support. It's a foreign country. It's Venezuela. It's a little controversial, and so it's a high quality document. But it's something that even some of the best technology out there has a hard time deducing because we don't have access to the barcode. We don't have access to the government data, and so it's really just relying on the visual analysis, the template analysis, and any data that we might have in the back. And so this was really a strategic move by the fraudster, honestly, to provide something that was less likely to get flagged by a system just because it's one of those odd passports.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because it is true, right? Like we get asked all the time, like what countries do you support or how can you use it? Well, in this scenario, and just for the listeners out there, this wasn't even a certified customer that went through this experience, but ultimately, when it did occur, like the fraudsters are just getting that strategic and that smart. And to Luis's point, there are a lot of different identity verification solutions out there and systems and tools that you can utilize. And a lot of them do publish online, like what countries or states they are really good at or they'll work with. And so the fraudsters did their homework in this case. At least that's our hypothesis. And they said, hey, here's a country that we don't think anyone's going to be able to verify. So therefore, it's going to be me versus this team. And when I walk into the office and I'm holding this document plus a visa and the confidence that I want this cash and I'm here to collect it, they're going to have a lot harder time being able to determine whether or not it's fraudulent, and certainly no additional tools to be able to support them in that instance, which is, pretty fascinating. With that information, the lenders called the fraudster one last time. They said, we've got all this information. We know it's a scam. We're going to call them. The fraudster picked up the phone. Can you believe this? Like, they've already committed the crime. They've already received the funds, and they still picked up the phone. Likely had that number stored. It wasn't like an accident. Like, oh, who's this title company calling me? And I just think it's fascinating that they are that confident that they're not going to get caught. And I think that's more than anything here is like, they know and they believe that they've set up the infrastructure as global kind of crime rings to prevent any type of remediation on their behalf. I can't really think of anything more as to why you would do that than the fact that they sort of see it as a game and they're just not scared, which is, again, kind of terrifying to us and everybody in the space of how they really believe and think of their actions. So the law enforcement did step in. I know the timeline's short here, but literally like the day after they kind of came to these revelations is actually when Certified got acknowledged and brought in. So our fraud recovery services team got activated the day after the actual individual found out that this cash out refi had occurred on their property. that's when we got brought in. We have a relationship with the United States Secret Service. We sort of went through all of our typical processes to act as quickly as we could to go and try to help this individual get their funds back. Unfortunately, too much time had gone by, and we really quickly found out that most of the funds had been wired out, and therefore there was going to be a really low likelihood of recovering these dollars. And so I think the big takeaways here are kind of what we've talked about, but we believe, and we've just seen that fraudsters are getting more confident, more convincing, and more sophisticated, right? I think the level of sophistication gives them the confidence. So the fact that they had sort of did the homework, they understood that they had incredible documentation, and that would then give them more confidence going into that office to sign the paperwork to get the funds. Those really go hand in hand. And I think, Luis is going to talk about it more here in a little bit, but the ability to leverage AI and the technology that's available enabled, I think, that document to be as good as it is. And therefore, we know it's on us and on other vendors in the industry. We got to evolve our tactics as well. So not only from a technology perspective, but also the process perspective, or how could we work together when there is an ID that's off the list or that we're not able to verify or somebody else isn't able to verify? How do we then kind of shoot up all the signals that something could be amiss and slow down and spend a little bit more time in verifying those types of transactions? And so we want to sort of transition here to just talk a little bit more about the landscape of fraudulent identification, because this is where we're seeing things really intensify. And our customers come to us all the time and say, what can we do? How can we be more empowered? We're just seeing higher degrees of higher degrees of fraudulent identities, or people that seem to be fishy, and we're getting nervous. And they're not alone. So when we look at the data, essentially last year, 77% of essentially businesses that operate in real estate as either title or escrow reported an increase in seller impersonation fraud. And so, that was that they either didn't see any the year before, or they saw a fake ID or somebody trying to impersonate a property owner. And in 2024, it was more, right? And so, unfortunately, just even within the first couple of months of 2025, I have a very high degree of conviction that that number will be just as high, if not higher, going into this year, with just how much we're catching fake IDs, how much our customers are speaking to it, reporting it. This is definitely a trend that is accelerating in a pretty meaningful way. And if you look back actually a year prior, this data is from 2023. This is them receiving a fake ID. So 55% of US-based businesses. So we sort of broaden the aperture, broaden the scope. That isn't just real estate. This is literally falsified documentation for opening up bank accounts or for registering for some kind of account or information online. And again, it's just a very big trend right now where whether fake IDs, synthetic IDs, people misappropriating themselves, it has unfortunately become nearly an epidemic in a lot of ways for how it is being presented out there. So we wanted to sort of help you understand maybe some of the why, or at least why we think this is happening right now. And a lot of it is due to technology. And so, not perfectly scientific here, but when we look back even just a couple of years ago, it took weeks or months to really produce something great when it came to a fake document. It could be expensive, it could be time consuming. It would take, kind of experts or people that had access to technology or information that others didn't. And it ultimately was just hard to get, a document that could really stand up side by side with the actual document. And now where we're at in 2025 is that with AI, with access to different technologies and tools, it's just becoming unbelievably easy. So, you can create fake documents that you can hold and feel and use, in minutes. You can create an unbelievable amount of things that you can use digitally and virtually on camera and over screens. And Luis is going to walk through some of those examples in just a minute. And then think about all the like generative images and identities, and the fact that you can't tell the difference right now between an AI picture that's a real human being or a human being that somebody made up. These things are all kind of coalescing at the same time to make it really, really challenging to be able to detect the difference between something that's real and something that's not. And so, in addition to that, not only do the fraudsters have the capability to do it on their own, they want everybody to have the capabilities of doing these things, right? So they're creating websites, they're creating places that you can actually go and make your own fake ID for $15. Unfortunately, I even had a member of my family recently that had something similar happen to them, where somebody filed their taxes on their behalf, and like they were able to falsify these documents. And I don't know if these types of tools were being utilized, but we know that it's as easy as going shopping online for fake identities as it is to go shopping online for, something on Amazon to send to your house. And so it's just the unfortunate reality of where we're at right now. And we believe it's our job to inform you and let you know that these things are available to the everyday consumer. And therefore, I think it's getting people excited about like, well, wait, crime could be easier than I thought, or maybe I can create a fake identity, and then, who knows, and becomes a slippery slope for folks kind of doing this that aren't just the, mass market criminals that we know. It's actually kind of bringing it down to enable just about anybody to create fraud. So Luis, with that, I'll turn it over to you to sort of go a little bit deeper on some of these and what the images look like, and give people a taste of what they're up against.
Yeah, totally. No, that's a great point. I mean, it's like, what's the term? It's crime as a service now. So it's, unfortunately, there's unsavory entrepreneurs out there trying to make a buck on this stuff. And just as it's, AI is making it easier for, graphic designers and developers to build things quicker, unfortunately, it's also bridging that gap for anybody who might not be interested in doing something reputable and can have access to these tools online. And so, it's definitely a new world, and it's definitely a lot of it is unknown, and we just have to keep watching and understanding what's going on. But there's tools out there like Ghost GPT, for example, which is trained on cyber criminal data, and it's available to cyber criminals. And this allows criminals to, just like you can put in a prompt into ChatGPT and get a lot of valuable information, you can also do the same thing and get information on how to defraud or generate images. And so I'm going to walk you through a couple images here of things that we've seen and are becoming more and more high quality. And so what we have here is essentially fake IDs and images of fake IDs are a lot easier to create. So what you have here is a 100% fake generated image. But as you can tell, this is something that you would that looks like something that you would do in any of the apps that are currently available for identity verification, even ours. So this is, you see the ID, it looks real. You have all the markers on it. It's even kind of laid down on some carpet. This is all fake, but easy to generate on a prompt. And so this might fail some systems, but if, for example, you're a title company that doesn't have an ID verification tool and you get this over email, you might trust this because it looks very realistic, or you might wonder if how hard this would be to fake. But unfortunately, as we know now, it's becoming a lot easier. And so these still images are one thing about IDs, and they can get deeper. And so, for example, here's a little bit of more of a combination. We have a real ID, a generated ID here, 100% generated, and then we have sort of a generated image, even with a marker on the person's neck. And so you can kind of imagine, you can say to someone, hey, put a date on a piece of paper and take a picture for me to make sure that it's you. And so that used to be maybe a safe way to get someone to cooperate with you and make sure that you maybe pulled up today's news, or you wrote something on a piece of paper. Now AI can actually generate that. And so that's the scary part, is that a lot of these more manual tactics are actually becoming a lot easier.
This one got me, like when we saw this floating around on the internet, because I don't know if you've ever rented a car from like Turo. you rent a car from Turo and they ask you to do this. They're like, hey, as you're picking up the car, like take out your ID and take a photo of yourself holding it. So like I've done this for other services that I've utilized before. But to think that somebody can not only create the fake ID, but the fake image of the person holding it and make it look like it happened like on that day or in a specific space is just, it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And we know, like not so long ago, we thought that AI couldn't do text, right? It couldn't do these things, or it couldn't do fingers and all that stuff. But it's been what, 6 months since then, and now we know it could generate pictures and text that look real. That little picture on her neck looks real, like she wrote it. And so it's just yeah, it's only going to get better and scarier here. And I think to kind of like layer that a little bit on top, more is, you have all these images, you can generate all this fake ID, but it becomes a lot more possible to use it because you have all these data breaches out there, right? So we've heard a lot this last year, and for the last past years, these giant breaches. We had Mr. Cooper, and a few other massive real estate databases exposed. And so what happens here is now these fraudsters have access to a ton of identities, a ton of information on people, and they can start creating and piecing it together. So they may not use someone's full identity, but they'll piece things that are true from some person and layer something false. And so in some of these cases, that becomes really hard to detect. And so it just adds that additional layer to create what we've known as synthetic identity or synthetic fraud. So as we kind of transition over to definitely scary times right now. There's a lot of AI that unfortunately can make it harder for us to detect. But what's the solution? How do we actually then spot fake IDs? And so transitioning into something more positive and how we might be able to do this. I have a few examples and kind of walk you through what we're thinking here. Today the industry provides a lot of tips. There's a lot of, obviously this is a big worry for the industry, and we've seen things out there. Tips include grab a magnifying glass to look for microprint, or use an IV holographic light to see the images. And unfortunately, this is sometimes not something that you're going to have in your office, or it might be difficult to get, and it kind of requires a little bit of that detective work. And so you also probably don't have access to all 50 states design elements, and even this stuff is available online. It might be hard for you to be able to gather, and also states change on a yearly and sometimes even more frequent basis. They change the design of the ID cards, and so keeping tabs with all that can be a very difficult task.
And I mean, the industry's trying, right? We're not trying to say that, like, we get it. Like, this stuff is hard. People aren't sure exactly how to give you advice on some of these things. And sure, could some of these work if every member of your team was like an expert and had these? Maybe, right? But like, it's a lot harder than that. And it's gotten a lot harder than that in a very short period of time. So like, you need to go deeper than what's being recommended today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's great resources, for sure, and having these tools could be helpful, but there is actually, a more holistic approach that we can take to actually help your team, make it easier for your team, and then reduce some of that investigative or detective work, that could lead to some dead ends there. But yeah, so, from our recommendation, here's, we have a sort of a 3-step process that we recommend for y'all. The step 1 is to set the rules for identity verification. Make ID verification required at the start of every file. That just, at this point, it is, table stakes. Whether it's a closing that you're going to be in person or remote, you still want to do that identity verification, because as we saw the example today, we had someone actually show up into the closing, who was a fraudster. And so in that first step, you want to make sure that if it is a remote signing or you're communicating with them over email, that you request a liveness test, that you put them on Zoom or put them on Teams, and then you pay close attention to the quality of the video. And at this point, there is still some nuances to the deep fakes where you can catch. So there's pay close attention to that as you do those liveness tests.
What isn't one of them like they always recommend you have to put your hand or something in front of your face, right? If you ever ask somebody to do that, because then the deep fake technology is not able to, at least the technology as it stands today. Maybe by the time you watch this, it could change. But isn't that a big one, Luis?
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So creating more barriers. So as you can see, as you can imagine, this technology is trying to map out the face, and it's using some technology to make sure that it's overlaying this. And so if you make it hard for that, or if you create some sort of interaction with that consumer to put something between them and the camera, or move the face, you might start seeing some of that glitch. And obviously, if they if they put any friction there, you might want to raise a flag there and be extra cautious. Another take is don't take images that are just exchanged over email, or if you have any way for a customer to upload anything to a secure portal or to a website, never let or never trust an image of an ID that comes to you uploaded. That's why that's why our tools and the tools out there require the customer to actually give access to the camera, because that is a unique point in time that now you get to know that for sure that picture was taken there and it wasn't generated. So be very cautious of uploads. Don't implement this in your process. That kind of leaves you open to receiving fake information that's been generated. And obviously, if all fails at that point earlier on, push for an in-person meeting as best you can. So for step 2, when ID is presented, if you're in person, these might sound familiar to you. These are, from our perspective, sort of the harder pieces to spoof. Obviously, there's exceptions to this. There's very high quality IDs, kind of like the passport that we showed today, that you can purchase online, unfortunately, that have all these markers or could have all these markers. But given that, for example, you have something that's an ID for the United States or a passport that maybe physical, I'd recommend looking at the holograms. Is there anything missing? Is the hologram complete? Is it really embedded into the ID itself? Can you look at the barcode itself, and is it presentable and scannable? Does it actually have data in it? Fraudsters can dupe that, but there's ways for us to figure out if that barcode was truly generated by a government entity. So understanding if that barcode has data and is presentable and real is important. Is there a state seal? There's multiple IDs that have seals over the face, over the side. There's all these different places that they put them. Make sure that those seals are visible. And then obviously this goes without saying, but make sure that the card holder matches the photo of the person that you're talking to. I think it could be really easy to just look at the data and look at the photo and compare at times, but just making sure that is a step that's consciously being made.
Awesome. And then our next step is really to build defenses and to build those with partners, because we believe that you really shouldn't be at this alone, right? And when you start, you got to have a process with those partners and with the people who are involved, right? So the one thing that we see that consistently causes fraud is inconsistencies, right? So if you start a new process, make that the process. Use it in every single transaction, and any time that there is nuance to that or a reason to not be able to do it, like the example we gave you, a Venezuelan ID that you look online and nobody can verify it electronically. That should put up all kinds of alarm bells, and you should slow down and treat that transaction very, very differently. And then the next one is really educate your partners. So when we think about, not only your team, but your real estate agent partners, let them know that you're going to be doing better identity verification checks. Encourage them to do better identity verification checks. Part of the reason why we built our solution the way that we did was so that you could actually enable real estate agent partners to actually utilize it. And then that kind of makes everybody in connection to a transaction working together and seeing sort of the common enemy, which is fraud, and being able to make sure ultimately you're going to keep all of your joint customers and clients safe. And then one thing that we love to hear is when some of our customers come up with fun ways to almost gamify fraud discoveries. At Certified, we have a board internally, and every time that we catch one on behalf of one of our customers, or we see something high risk that we're able to stop, we really celebrate it. But we're focused as a fraud prevention company. Sometimes that can get lost as a title company or someone who's just trying to do your job. But one of our customers recently said, I give gift cards to any of my employees who successfully discover a fraud. Just something little, not to make them shift their focus to only trying to go catch fraud, but a fun way to positively reinforce that they do need to be aware of these things. They do need to be looking for it, because if they're not, or if they're just scared that, if they make a mistake, they're going to be in trouble or something's going to happen, people don't operate well out of that sort of fear-based scenario, at least from some of what we've seen be most successful. So just some ideas here, ways to make this a team sport and make sure that y'all are working together to ensure that you're not going to get duped by a fraudster. So Luis, now we got to do it. You know, is there an easier way? Can you show them one more thing that might help them out as they think about identity verification in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been obviously thinking about this for a long time and working with y'all on a with all our products and with those lessons, we've essentially built our own system. So you might have heard is our system is called Match, and it's actually a multi-layered identity verification process that has a lot more than just that ID capture and that liveness check. It actually does check IDs and selfies. So we support. Over 10,000 different documents across the United States. United States and the world. We do have those lists online. We also check, not only the IDs, but we do check 150 different fraud markers on the device, on the network, on, as the person is moving through our system, we're doing a variety of checks. And then to kind of top this all off is we actually do analyze proactively. And so our system can actually detect suspicious activity even before someone opening the actual request. So if someone receives an email or clicks on that link and they get to that first page, we're already doing a ton of different analysis on that device, and we can flag fraud, and we have flagged fraud, and we'll show you here an example of how that works here shortly. But this is essentially a full comprehensive system. It's a really easy to use. You receive a request from Certified via text or email. It's a really friendly experience where your customers are prompted to go through the whole experience. They pick the ID that they want to choose. We support, like I said, over 10,000 different IDs, and then the experience is seamless. They get to complete this. They get a success message at the end, and then you get back a response, with our analysis from the ID. So the recipient doesn't know what happened, but you will know sort of in the background what that analysis was and what the determination on our side was. But yeah, but we'll show you an example here of one of the cases where a match request was sent to one of our customers, and the fraudster didn't even have to complete the process, and we were able to detect this and stop it. And so we're going to play a quick snippet here of our support team who actually takes care of these calls and proactively notifies customers, and then we'll have a little chat about that.
And one of the things that I just love about this is like people ask us often like how to compare, there's a lot of different identity verification tools, but I think it's really important to remember that like a lot of them are just capture the picture of the ID or even the liveliness check. And it is that layering. We've always talked about layers of protection, and it's that layering of all the other things that we've incorporated in the flow to make sure that this person, isn't impersonating someone and they're standing in a foreign country, or they're somewhere that they shouldn't be, or that the device has been hijacked. All of those things play a major role even before they even have an opportunity to capture a picture of an ID or do the liveliness check. And I just think it's been really thoughtful in terms of the way that we've brought this to market. So excited for you all to hear this example and learn from our customers and our team in terms of how we've been able to manage this.
Thank you so much for waiting. How can I help you?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you, Tim?
Doing all right, thanks. I'm reaching out this morning about a new match request I see you sent this morning to a Janice.
Uh-huh.
I suppose calling because we noticed a number of red flags on this one that we just wanted to alert you to, and also just wanted to know if there's anything off about this deal or anything suspicious you've noticed on your end.
This, um, well, that's why I'm sending it out. They're in the process of negotiation, and this one, I've been working with a listing agent. She researched him, and everything seems to match. But then I told her I want to run his ID through our certified IDs, make sure it is who he is.
Okay.
What's showing on your end? I'm just curious.
And then who is? Sorry, I see it was addressed to Janice. Is that the seller?
Well, so yes, he
Mm-hmm.
is one of the heirs to. He received this property via partition trust, a deed. So he pretty much inherited this property, but that's what the record shows. But then I don't know anything about him, and my listing agent has never worked with him before, so that's why we're running the ID through. But based on what he has provided to the listing agent, everything seems to be up and up. However, we're waiting to see what title comes back with.
Okay, got it. I appreciate that. So What we're seeing, they actually haven't even opened the link yet. However, what tipped us off and why we wanted to call you immediately is that we have actually seen this phone number used multiple times across other customers of ours um, in
Wow.
potential vacant lot frauds. Yeah. So that's what kind of tipped us off, and also seeing that it was a vacant lot. As you may know, we see a much higher amount of fraud attempts
Yes.
on those lots.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what tipped us off and wanted to make sure that you were aware. Based on that, we would consider this to be pretty high risk, just because, again, since last summer, even I believe we've seen this number a handful of times each time. So there's a lot and a fraud attempt.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. I will reach out to my listing agent, see if we can get any type of documents from him
Perfect. Yeah.
that he's
See if you
gathered
can.
for us.
Yeah, if you could try and get an ID from them directly, my assumption, and we'll see what happens. My assumption is they probably won't end up going through certified. We've seen this before where they know their ID is fake, and so they'll try and find an excuse or say it's not working, or try and avoid going through the process. So my assumption is they probably won't end up even attempting, but we'll keep an eye out and see if they do attempt to go through the
Okay.
verification process.
That's good to know. And then how do I reach back out to you if I
Yeah.
receive any type?
Let me give you my number here, my direct line.
Okay, perfect. Let me alert the listing agent to get some documents
Perfect.
from him, and I will reach you back out on this. Okay?
Perfect. And then I would
Thank you
also
for the
double
call.
check too. Oh yeah, sorry. One more thing. I would just double check on the documents you do have. I assume, they're notarized. I would double check and see if it's a notary you've worked with before. Um, Maybe even get in touch with like the notary on there to verify if they're the ones who actually did do that. Or if it's, potentially a fake notary or impersonating someone. Could be a good thing to look into as well.
Yeah. Apparently, attorneys are involved in this, so
Okay.
I'm going to wait and see. But I will call the listing agent and see if we can get him to get on the certified ID, and then we'll go from there. And I'll ask for a copy of his ID as well.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Elaine. And yeah, don't hesitate. Give me a call back if you have any questions or if you learn anything else. Here to
Yep,
help.
I sure will. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff. Anytime there's vacant lot, we send it through you guys because you guys have the
Perfect.
technology. So thank you for the heads up. I appreciate that, Tim. All right, you have
Yeah.
a good one.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Elaine. Bye now.
Bye.
So what you heard there, guys, was actually one of our support staff, Tim, actually doing a proactive call with our customer after we had detected some anomalies in that request. And so, as you can tell on the call, it doesn't seem like the fraudster had actually even tried to complete it, but our system had already detected. And as Tim was talking to the person there, it was clear that she was also suspicious of what was going on and was the reason that she sent it. But as you can tell, she asked him, what are some of the markers or what are you seeing on your side? And that's the beauty of the system we've created, is that we could actually see, and in our case, we were able to link this across different title companies and different frauds across our network. And so that's the value of that proactive monitoring and match, is that we can connect and create these relationships and know if we see something fishy, we can see it across the network and stop it. And so this was such a good example of that in play.
Well, and I think it's so cool too. One of the things that's been fun as the business has grown is like, the amount of volume that we have now across that network with thousands of agents utilizing it, every single day. Like the strength in numbers continues to build, which is that fun part of like, hey, as partners, we can get stronger if we all work together. And I think this is a great example of exactly how that worked.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And as you can tell, she went out and wanted to go contact the seller's agent, and that's exactly the right move, to go ahead and pull in your partners and make sure that they're involved and you showcase that and you protect them from the fraud as well. So
Awesome. Well, that wraps it up for us here today. You can see on the screen we have a QR code. If you're interested in our certified match product or learning more, you can go to certified.com/identity-verification or snap this QR code, and that'll take you to learn more about our product. But we appreciate you all joining us today. Luis, thanks for walking us through so many great examples, and we'll look forward to you all catching us next time on To Catch a Fraudster.
sweet. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate you guys. Have a nice day.